required for the project. The last remaining piece is brine size analysis. We know from previous work that the dissolution rate or the kinetics of gold dissolution in cyanide is very rapid here because of the mineralogy. We think we may be able to coarsen up our brine. The significance, coarser brine means less time in the SAG mill, less consumption of electricity, higher throughput. So that'll be one aspect we'll be looking at. Our environmental studies. Over a year ago, we began gathering baseline data in terms of environmental work. We've completed our water chemistry, both groundwater as well as superficial water. We've installed monitoring wells so we can now monitor groundwater movement. We've completed our biological surveys, bugs and bunnies. We know what's out there. With all of that data in hand, we expect to be able to complete an environmental assessment of the project by late this year. That'll be coupled with a project description. We're being told by EBA, our environmental consultants, which are part of the Tetra Tech group, that we should be able to submit these documents to the Ministry of Northern Development and Mines and the Ministry of Natural Resources in Ontario at the end of this year, formally starting the permitting process, which will take place before the PFS. Another important aspect is scoping for CapEx funding. This has been ongoing. Tony Wood and I have been focusing on this in particular starting in the middle of this year. We recognize the importance of assuring shareholders that we will attempt to source non-equity sources of funding to build this project. And some of our major shareholders are associated with institutions that do provide non-equity funding. Because of the nature of this project, its strong economics, its location in a geopolitically safe jurisdiction, when you compare it as an investment opportunity from the debt side, you realize that, okay, these guys should be able to pay it back rapidly, and we're not going to have to worry about any large disruptions. In other words, it's a very attractive project. Hence, we have a lot of interest from the debt community in helping us finance this project. The final item here, though, I think perhaps may be one of the most important. This is something that's endemic to Canada. We need First Nation consultations. We need to work with the local Aboriginal communities to get projects approved. For any major project involving the natural resource sector, this is a key check mark. You're looking at how can they go forward. You need to complete these consultations. We hope before the end of the year to be able to announce initial memorandums of understanding with 2 of the principal First Nation communities with which we are dealing with in our area. These 2 bands have traditional uses for these lands. The consultations are already underway, and with formal MOUs in place, I think many people will be able to say, okay, that's a major checkbox in terms of being able to permit and operate in this area. To summarize here, what do we look at our company? How do I do the elevator pitch? What are the key items? We have a plus 5 million ounce deposit with controllable CapEx and controllable operating costs, which generates strong NPV, a high IRR, and a rapid payback. Magino has a very simple geology. That translates into simple metallurgy and high recoveries, which influence the cash you receive from processing this material. And again, we're talking about developing this project in a brownfield, infrastructure-rich environment in Canada. These all serve to distinguish our development project from the others globally. The catalyst, of course, reducing risk through the pre-feasibility process, and I would again emphasize the macro business environment in the gold sector is emphasizing operations or potential operations in geopolitically safe jurisdictions. Our met testing, environmental work, permitting work is all ongoing, so it'll be very easy for us to make sure people realize as we hit each one of these stepping stones or benchmarks towards pre-feasibility. And finally, just the value proposition slide. You can see the date of this is 26th of August, almost right after we put out our resource estimate. So even in the last 3 weeks, we've actually made some very good progress towards the center part of the slide. The industry value, average value of $53 in EV has gone up slightly, but we're making good progress in that direction. And I think that's an important thing to remember. This particular collection of comparables includes a number of producers on the left-hand side. That's where we want to go. So as we step back and see where do we hope our company can end up, we're moving to the left, and with continued execution on our pre-feasibility plan, we should continue to move to the left and generate value for our shareholders. Thank you very much, and I'd love to answer any questions that any of you may have. Yes, sir.
In the latest news release, it seemed there was change from the quote, full feasibility study of previous news releases to, quote, pre-feasibility. Why the change, and what has to happen in that pre-feasibility, and does that mean going forward to the full feasibility?
Yeah, the principal reason for that, the role that the pre-feasibility study serves under NI 43-101 is to provide the investor the opportunity to see the analysis of what went into selecting the processing method, the mining methods, et cetera. In other words, what are the development alternatives, what are the likely outcomes, and why did the company select X, Y, or Z? In consultation, of course, with the third party preparing the document. And we felt that going from the PEA at 20,000 tons a day, we're now being scoped up to 30,000 tons a day. It would be important to analyze that and take advantage of the PFS process to explain to the investing public exactly why we're going to 30 and say not up to 40. You know, what went into that? What analysis went into that decision-making process? As we go about selecting cutoff grade, a lot of people might instantly go, okay, you've got 6 million ounces, you should be building a mine to grab every one of those ounces. The reality is when you start looking at the costs, et cetera, involved, you do start coming up with a preferred development alternative, and you can use the PFS to put that forward. A key to doing that is transparency, but also we recognize that in terms of permitting, going PFS to definitive does not interrupt the permitting process. With the PFS in hand, we will be able to submit for all major permits required to build the mine. So it doesn't influence that permitting timeline and therefore the overall development timeline, but then does provide, again, the ability to explain to you and other potential investors exactly why we're going about the project in this specific way versus an alternative way.
Okay.
Yes, sir.